Hey everybody, this is Andy, aka Ghost, and I'm here with another Deck Builder Spotlight. And this week we have Donovan, aka Dosu, he was on the podcast, I believe it was episode 4?
Yep, episode 4.
Right on. So this week he's going to be talking about one of his decks. Why don't you introduce yourself first, Donovan, and then we'll introduce the deck.
Alright, my name's Donovan, I go by Dosu online. I'm a combo player through and through, but I do like kicking back from time to time and just playing really casual, fun games.
Alright, and this week we are looking at which deck of yours?
This is my Gaddock Teeg deck. He's a green-white legend from Lorwyn. If you're not familiar with him, this guy's probably one of the more, I guess, douchebag generals out there, but no, bear with me for a second. He's basically a 2/2, costs a green and a white. Says non-creature spells with converted mana cost 4 or greater can't be played, and non-creature spells with X in their mana cost can't.
Yeah, so this guy's notorious for shutting down a lot of decks' game plans. In Commander, people tend to play with really high mana curves if they pay attention to mana curves at all. And then Gaddock Teeg flops onto the board, and they're left with a handful of really powerful spells they can't play. So he's a pretty inherently powerful effect, and making him your general, well, having consistent access to him is a real pain in the ass for a lot of decks. So what kind of general strategy does this deck follow?
Well, this deck is... most of the time, it's a combo deck. You're trying to assemble one combo or another, and Gaddock Teeg, he isn't there to like lock people out of the game per se, but he's there as protection for your combos to make sure people can't like austere command away all your enchantments and stuff. He just slows people down enough so that you can do what you want to.
Okay, now could this deck work with any other general in its place, like another protective general, or because the effect that he provides is fairly unique? So I don't know if there's anybody else that you could use to kind of replicate this.
Well, actually, I swap him out for Saffi Eriksdotter like all the time, and Saffi's in the deck already.
Mm-hmm.
So if I find I'm going into like a more casual play group or setting or something, then I'll shuffle Teeg in and use Saffi as my general instead, which she's part of some of the combos. So I mean, it functions just as well, almost.
That's kind of cool. Now, would you say the deck is softer with her as a general, like it's easier to play against?
Oh, definitely, because like when you start spitting out all these creatures and tokens and stuff, you know, she'll protect you to some extent, but where Teeg stops all the wrath effects and the time stretches and the Armageddons, you know, now you're just kind of cold to all that stuff.
That's interesting, though, because most of these decks that I've talked about in this series, everyone said when I've asked another general will work, they've always said no. You're the only person that said yes, so it's kind of cool that your deck is modular in that sense, and that it also scales to different play groups.
Yeah, and it's a completely different play experience, too, because she just gives you a lot more options than Teeg does from the start of the game.
Okay, now you mentioned that you are a combo player, and that this deck has some combos that you are, I'm assuming, your typical win conditions, as opposed to beating down?
Yeah, I combo out probably a little more than 50% of the time, and other times it's just like random creature beats.
Okay, now what are your main combos, your preferred ones that you use as your win conditions?
Well, I mean, the big one is a Lark combo.
So this is the Reveillark combo in full, in case you're not familiar with it.
All right, well, let's assume you have something like, as a lot of these pieces are interchangeable, but let's assume you have Reveillark, Karmic Guide, and, I don't know, Martyr's Calls in. So, basically what you do first, you're going to sacrifice Karmic Guide to Martyr's Calls, and you can prevent damage from anything you want. It doesn't have to be anything important. All you want to do is get the Karmic Guide in the graveyard. At the same time, let's assume we have any creature with power 2 or less in the graveyard, like maybe an acidic slime. So then we're going to sacrifice Reveillark to Martyr's Calls. Reveillark's Leaves Play trigger is going to activate. And you're going to bring back Karmic Guide and Acidic Slime. Both of their enters the battlefield triggers are going to happen. Karmic Guide brings back Reveillark, and then Acidic Slime blows up something. And now you're going to start the process over. Sacrifice Acidic Slime and Karmic Guide, get those back into your graveyard. Then sack the Reveillark to bring both those back along with Reveillark and blow something else up. You can repeat this until, you know, you're blue in the face or people don't want to play with you anymore.
Either one is possible.
Yeah, you can blow up everyone's lands with Acidic Slime, or, I don't know, get every land in your deck with Sakura Tribuilder. Like, it really doesn't matter at that point.
Yeah, there's just a lot you can do with it.
Yeah, just be a general douchebag with it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now, do you have any other reliable combos or win conditions that you reach for?
Certainly. A lot of the other ones revolve around Earthcraft, which is an enchantment from Stronghold, I believe. It's 2 mana, says you can tap an untapped creature you control to untap a basic land. So, I don't know, with something like Squirrel Nest, which is probably the most obvious combo, Squirrel Nest is a... Okay, so you're going to tap the land enchanted with Squirrel Nest to make a token, and then Earthcraft lets you tap that token to untap the Squirrel Nest land. And so you can just make infinite number of tap tokens, then your turn rolls around, untap with them, and swing. And Earthcraft also allows you to go infinite with other token producers like Ant Queen or Sacred Mesa, as long as you have something like Fertile Ground or Heartbeat of Spring to make that land tap for more than one mana, which isn't a problem. That happens all the time.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now, why would you say that this kind of strategy works? Because obviously, you can catch people off guard if they've never played against the deck before, but after the first couple times, when they know what the deck does, obviously they're going to be wary of the key combo pieces when they start coming into play, or they might start attacking your deck with things like Sadistic Sacraments. So how do you make sure that this deck can keep doing its thing even after it's getting disrupted? Like, why is this strategy effective in multiplayer?
All right, well, I mean, it's effective for a couple reasons. The first of all is that, in multiplayer, everyone's going to gang up on whoever appears to be the biggest threat. And the plus side is that a lot of these combo pieces don't necessarily seem related when you see them.
That's
for
very
the first
true.
time.
Yeah.
So you can just come out of nowhere and just combo the table, and people catch on to that. But even when they start hitting you with disruption, like nothing in this deck ever stays dead. Like there are so many cards that just keep bringing things back from the graveyard, like Sun Titan and Nostalgic Dreams and Genesis. Like nothing ever stays in the graveyard. So barring like repeatable graveyard hate, like a lot of times if someone disrupts your combo, you can just get it back and go on. Also, a lot of times, the situation will arise where you simply can't combo. But at that point, beating down with Sun Titans and Reveillarks and a bunch of tokens, that's a perfectly valid way of winning. And that actually comes up a lot.
Mm-hmm. Now, you're playing Gaddock Teeg, like we were talking about. It's not a very popular card to have on the table in a multiplayer setting that can turn a lot of stink eyes towards you.
Certainly.
So how do you deal with having all this hate locked onto you?
Well, like I try not to like offend people. I really do.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times
I know you're pretty chilled out when it comes to this kind of thing.
Yeah, like I'll get the evil stares sometimes. I'm like, a lot of times I'll take it to like a PTQ or something, and they'll have an EDH side event. I'm like, just bear with me this one game or something.
Yeah.
And honestly, a lot of times Gaddock Teeg just shuts down people entirely. It doesn't happen a lot, but occasionally there will be people who just simply can't play a lot of their deck, and I do feel kind of bad about that. But I mean, that's what the deck does. If you know going into it, it's not going to be like a cutthroat environment. Again, I just switch it out for a Saffi Eriksdotter and have more fun with it.
Mm-hmm. So if you expect people to be hating on you, you don't worry about that. You either you play it the way it's supposed to be played, or you actually change the deck so that you don't have to worry about that.
Well, yeah, I mean, the downside with offering prizes in a casual format like EDH is that, essentially you're playing for like a $30 bill or something.
Yeah.
I mean, if people start hating on your survival of the fittest, that's not going to stop you from winning because you have a survival of the fittest in play. But then, after the fact, I'm more than happy to just play a chilled game and just, I don't know, be more laid back with it, not to go for all the infinite combos, just play this sort of a card advantage rock type deck.
Yeah, for sure. Now, what would you say are the kind of weaknesses that this deck can run in? Are there any particular cards or archetypes that can give it a hassle?
Dedicated aggro archetypes can actually be kind of nightmarish because the deck doesn't have a lot of board sweepers. And
that's interesting because that is the answer I get the absolute most for almost every deck I interview is people always talk about how aggro is weak in EDH, and yet almost everyone says that their deck's weakness is aggro.
Well, yeah, like no one plays aggro in multiplayer. I mean, it's just a losing proposition unless you've got like a ton of slivers or something.
Slivers come up a lot too. Yeah, that's.
I mean, just because that's an aggro deck that's pseudo viable, I guess.
Yeah, I suppose also most people don't plan for fast aggro decks, right?
Right. I mean, I run a couple board sweepers like a Myojin of Cleansing Fire. I can cast through Gaddock Teeg because it's a creature, and Martial Coup is good enough to play anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But those cost 7 or 8 mana. So unless I can clog up the board with like tokens and stuff, which is fine, then I'm pretty cold to fast aggro deck.
Yeah. Now, do you have any difficulty dealing with the Voltron decks? Because those seem to be kind of either picking a lot of interest in internet circles, and around here they're actually kind of picking up in popularity.
Well, yeah, actually in our playgroup there's a Ural the Miststalker player,
mm-hmm.
and he can be a problem for a lot of decks that aren't running a lot of board sweepers. But actually, I've got a silver bullet for that guy. Martyr's Calls. The enchantment doesn't actually target, I don't believe. No, it doesn't. So you can just start pumping out tokens or little creatures of any sort and just sack them to prevent the damage that Euro would deal that turn.
Yeah,
you can make creatures
sweet.
faster than you can sack them. So that's fine.
Okay, right on. Now, in terms of actual cards that might give you some pause, is there anything in particular that this deck has a hard time dealing with, or do you think your toolbox is pretty well equipped?
Tormod's Crypt is pretty darn annoying, and so is a Leyline of the Void if someone starts with that in play.
Yeah.
I mean, you can survive through one Graveyard Hate spell, but once they start doing it more than once, the second Tormod's Crypt is what really gets you.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, they might hose the Reveillark combo the first time, but then the second time, they just take away your backup plan, and I don't know, it's just a nightmare.
For sure. This is why I always tell everyone, play your Graveyard Hate. Watch that video I made. Get on that,
Exactly.
people. It's essential.
Listen to this guy.
Yeah, well, I don't know about listen to me. A lot of that advice was from
Listen,
people a lot
listen to
smarter than
Byron.
me. Yeah, listen to Byron. He knows what he's talking about. Okay, now, do you have any advice to anybody that's playing a similar kind of deck?
I don't even know.
Yeah.
Like,
It's a pretty, in fairness,
to be
it's a
more
pretty unique
specific?
effect. These kind of decks that can shut down, like the Gaddock Teeg Denial is more what I'm talking about, where you flop him onto the board, and you might have to deal with a lot of people, like I said, giving you the stink eye.
Yeah.
Like, so Denial decks in general with those kind of effects, or Iona, those kind of things. Do you have any advice for anyone that's playing those decks, like way they should, things they can put in their deck to help them with that, things they can do in the game to curry favor, even though everyone knows that their deck is going to piss them off down the road, that kind of thing?
Well, as far as like card choices are concerned, like I don't really know what to tell you there, but it's definitely possible to play cards like Gaddock Teeg and Reveillark without being a jerk about it. Like, you're just going to have to be a nice guy in general, and if your play group's getting sick and tired of seeing Lark every game, don't play it. Switch
Yeah.
decks.
Okay. If you could add anything to this deck, like there's no cost restraint here. We're going to observe the banned list, but
Okay.
if you could add anything, like if I gave you, I drove a dump truck of money up to your house and dropped it off and said, you got to spend this on Magic cards for that one deck, what would you pick up for it?
Oh, that'd be awesome. I guess first thing I get a Primeval Titan. Like, I'm super poor, so I can't afford one of those bad boys.
Yeah, join the club.
Yeah, but I would add Primeval Titan and Knight of the Reliquary, and I guess Gaia's Cradle. Go for more like a toolbox land approach.
Mhm.
And in a similar vein, actually getting real fetch lands, so I don't have to run Terramorphic Expanse and Evolving Wilds.
I think
That'd
those are
be
still
cool, too.
good, but yeah, obviously the real deal is better, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like, these are okay substitutes, but they're mostly in there for like Life from the Loam. But it'd make the mana all the more stable. That's
Yeah.
fine.
That's interesting that you don't actually have a Knight of the Reliquary in there. Is that just for cost reasons right now, or?
Well, Knight of the Reliquary was actually in the original build, and I had more utility lands like Core Haven and stuff.
Yep.
And I don't know, like, the payout wasn't enough just for Knight of the Reliquary. But if I had Primeval Titan, then that would probably make it more worthwhile to like sacrifice a little bit on the stability side of the mana base and add more like utility land.
Yeah, Primeval Titan's definitely like a deck-changing card when you throw that in.
Agreed.
Different
If I had
realms open up.
If I had one of those, like, you could probably honestly fit in like Amaria's Sky Ruin.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, I'm kind of surprised you don't have that in there as well. But now, when you explain that, that makes perfect sense. Okay, yeah, so that's it. That's kind of all the time we have. Is there anything else you want to add about the deck in particular? Any advice, comments, whatever you got to say, you got to say?
Don't be a douchebag. Just play Gaddock Teeg. It's different.
Yep. Play it and see what happens, see where the cards fall.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, right on. So that's it for this Deck Builder Spotlight. I want to thank Donovan for coming on with me. Always a pleasure. And know that he will be back on the podcast in the near future if you're interested in hearing more of what he says. And I don't know why he wouldn't be, because he's got a lot more interesting to say than I do. Otherwise, hit us up at CommanderCast@blogspot.com as always, or email me at CommanderCast@gmail.com if you've got anything to say.